Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Introduction. Have you ever felt completely and utterly stuck? Like you're shaking the bars of a prison cell, desperate to get out, only to realize the cell has no walls? You were free the entire time. It's a powerful image, isn't it? It's also one of the central secrets hiding in a book that has quietly become a phenomenon, selling millions of copies and touching hearts around the world. It's a book written by a therapist named Lori Gottlieb, but this isn't your typical self-help manual. Far from it. This is a story about a therapist whose life falls apart, forcing her to go see a therapist of her own. It's an incredibly honest, funny, and wise look behind the curtain of the human heart. We get to be a fly on the wall, not just in her therapy sessions, but in the sessions she conducts with her own patients. We meet a self-absorbed Hollywood producer who calls everyone an idiot, a young newlywed diagnosed with a terminal illness, a senior citizen who plans to end her life on her 70th birthday if things don't improve, and a 20-something who can't stop hooking up with the wrong people, including the guy she calls the dude from the waiting room. Their stories are fascinating, but what makes this book a modern classic is how their journeys mirror the therapist's own. It reveals a profound truth: we are all more the same than we are different. Today, we're going to step into that therapy room together. By the end of our time, I promise you, you will understand not just how therapy works, but how we work. You'll discover the difference between the pain that life gives us and the suffering we create for ourselves. And you'll learn one of the most important lessons of all: how to become the author of your own story, rather than just a character in it. This isn't just a summary, it's an invitation to look inside, and, just maybe, to wake up. Book summary. Let me introduce you to a man named John. He walks into a therapist's office, sits down, and declares that his life is filled with idiots. The driver who stopped at a yellow light, the dental hygienist who asks too many questions, even the Apple technician at the Genius bar who couldn't fix his laptop. Some genius, he scoffs. The therapist listening to him is our guide, Lori Gottlieb. And as she listens to John's rambling monologue, she's repeating a mantra in her head: have compassion, have compassion, have compassion. It isn't easy. John is abrasive, arrogant, and seems to have no self-awareness. He even tells Lori he chose her as his new therapist because she's a nobody in Los Angeles, so he won't run into any of his important colleagues from the television industry. He pays in cash so his wife won't know. "You'll be like my mistress," he says with a grin. Then he corrects himself. "Actually, more like my hooker." Lori has a rule she learned in her training: there is something likable in everyone. She's found it in murderers and criminals. But as she sits with John, she's struggling. Today, he just seems like an asshole. An asshole with spectacular teeth. But then, as John continues his rant, something shifts inside Lori. His outrage feels strangely familiar. The way he blames the outside world for his frustrations, the certainty that he is completely right and has been terribly wronged. That's exactly how she has felt all day. Because what John doesn't know is that Lori, his therapist, is reeling. The night before, the man she thought she was going to marry, the man she called boyfriend, unexpectedly ended their relationship. And now, she's trying to hold it together for her patients, crying in the 10-minute breaks between sessions and carefully wiping away her mascara before the next person arrives. She looks at John, this man complaining about the idiot who wronged him, and she thinks to herself, "I hear you, brother." This is where our story begins. Not with a therapist who has all the answers, but with one who is just as human, just as fragile, and just as lost as the rest of us. It's a story about therapy, yes, but it's really a story about how we heal. And it starts with a moment that feels like the end of the world. Let's rewind to the night before. Lori is in bed with boyfriend. He's a kind, decent man. The kind of guy who brings home your favorite meatballs from Costco without you asking, who rubs your back while you binge-watch Netflix, who leaves love notes on your desk. They are planning their life together. Just a few minutes ago, they were deciding which movie to see on the weekend. Then, he goes strangely silent. It's not a comfortable silence. It's a silence on a frequency that only someone in love can perceive. "Hey, is something up?" Lori asks, trying to sound casual. And then he says it. A sentence that comes out of nowhere. "I've decided that I can't live with a kid under my roof for the next 10 years. Lori has an 8-year-old son. She bursts out laughing. It has to be a joke. It's so ridiculous, so out of the blue. But he isn't joking. He explains that his own teenagers are leaving for college soon, and he doesn't want to wait another decade for an empty nest. He wants his freedom. He wants to relax on weekend mornings and read the paper without her son occasionally saying, "Look at my Lego, look what I made." "The thing is," boyfriend explains, "I don't want to have to look at the Legos. I just want to read the paper." Lori is stunned. Her mind races through the stages of grief at lightning speed. Denial, the laughter, anger, when the hell were you going to tell me? And now, bargaining. Can they make it work? Can she take on more childcare? But he's firm. It's not about her, he insists. He wants to marry her. Just not her with a kid. "You can't order me up à la carte," she thinks, "like a burger without the fries." In her therapy practice, Lori has a blunt saying for patients who get stuck on these kinds of impossible conditions: if the queen had balls, she'd be the king. It's her way of saying that the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you spend your life picking and choosing, waiting for an ideal that doesn't exist, you might deprive yourself of all joy. And now, her own boyfriend is telling her that if she didn't have a kid, she'd be perfect. But she does have a kid. And just like that, her future is gone. This becomes her presenting problem, the issue that sends a person into therapy. The next morning, Lori is a wreck. She calls her friends. One tells her to go sleep with someone else. Another, a fellow therapist named Jen, diagnoses boyfriend as avoidant, or maybe just an asshole, but they can only offer so much comfort. Jen is the one who finally says it: "Maybe you should talk to someone." She tells Lori, "You need to find a place where you're not being a therapist. You need to go where you can completely fall apart." Lori knows she's right. But finding a therapist when you are a therapist is incredibly tricky. You can't see anyone in your professional or social orbit. It's an ethical breach known as a dual relationship. The therapy room needs to be its own sacred, separate space. So, while she is surrounded by therapists, she feels like she's stranded in the middle of the ocean, dying of thirst. Water, water, everywhere, nor any drop to drink. She ends up calling a colleague she doesn't know well, Caroline, and asks for a referral. For a friend, she makes up a story about this friend being a high-functioning man in his 40s who would prefer a male therapist who is also married with kids. She wants an objective opinion from someone just like boyfriend, convinced that any reasonable man would be as appalled as she is. She's seeking objectivity, but only because she's certain it will rule in her favor. After a few dead ends, Caroline suggests a psychologist named Wendell Bronson. "He's smart," she says. "Married with kids. Been doing this a long time." That's all Lori knows. She calls and leaves a message, her voice cracking as she says the word therapist. When Wendell calls back, he says about 5 words, mostly ahas, before offering her an appointment the next morning. It's not much, but just making the call brings a wave of relief. This is the placebo effect of therapy, the hope that begins even before you step into the room. Tomorrow, she thinks, she'll get help. Wendell will confirm that boyfriend is a sociopath, and this will all become a beautiful oops, a minor blip on the radar of her life. The next morning, Lori walks into Wendell's office and is immediately confused. There's no traditional therapist chair. Just two long sofas arranged in an L shape. She doesn't know where to sit. She chooses a spot, and Wendell sits opposite her. He says nothing. He just waits. And then, it all comes pouring out. She tells him the whole story, sobbing uncontrollably. This is the place Jen told her about? The place where she can completely fall apart. She makes her case, laying out all the evidence for why boyfriend is an avoidant sociopath. She's sure that this married, professional man with kids will validate her, tell her she dodged a bullet. But Wendell doesn't offer any of that. Instead, after listening patiently, he asks a simple question that cuts through all her noise. I wonder if you're grieving something bigger than the loss of your boyfriend. Lori wants to punch him. What a load of garbage. She was fine before this. More than fine. She has a child she adores, a career she enjoys, a supportive family, amazing friends. She's here to get through a breakup, not to dissect her entire life. But Wendell knows what all therapists know, that the presenting problem is often just a symptom of a much larger story. And as much as Lori wants to resist, a small part of her knows he's right. If she just wanted to complain about boyfriend, she could do that for free with her friends. She's paying Wendell for something more. She is in that space between knowing and not knowing. This is the beginning of her journey, and it's a journey that will force her to look at the stories she tells herself. And to understand her own story, we have to go back in time, to a young woman who, long before she became a therapist, was obsessed with stories of a different kind. In her 20s, Lori worked in Hollywood. She started as a junior film agent's assistant, where she overheard her boss asking his mentor, "Should I pick the smart one or the hot one?" When she got the job, she felt perversely hurt, concluding she must be the smart one. She loved the creative side of the work, crafting stories and developing characters. She moved up, becoming a film executive, but the glamour quickly faded. The work felt slow, and she found herself feeling bored, depressed even. The only thing that brought her any relief was watching TV every night. So she did what seemed logical. She got a job in television at NBC. It was the dream. She worked on shows that would become massive hits, like ER and Friends. She was there when Jennifer Aniston auditioned. She was on set with a young George Clooney. She was energized, connected to her work again. She had solved her problem. Or so she thought. One of the shows she worked on, ER, had a medical advisor, a real-life emergency room doctor named Joe. Lori, ever the researcher, asked if she could visit him at work. In borrowed scrubs, she started shadowing him in the ER. The drunk drivers, the gang shootings, the brain tumors, these weren't fictional stories. This was real life, raw and immediate. And she was captivated. She kept going back, week after week. "You seem more interested in what we're doing here than in your day job," Joe observed one night. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "You could still go to medical school, you know." The idea was crazy. She was 28, a language major in college. But something had shifted. The real stories of the ER made the imaginary ones on television feel thin. The moment of decision came on a Sunday at a county hospital. A doctor pulled back a curtain to reveal a woman with complications from diabetes. The smell was overwhelming, and when the doctor lifted the sheet, Lori saw that the woman's lower legs were gone. One of her stumps was infected with gangrene, black and moldy. Lori felt faint, trying to hold her breath. And then, something extraordinary happened. The woman on the table, the one in unimaginable pain, took Lori's hand and smiled at her, as if to reassure her. In that single, selfless gesture, Lori knew. She was going to medical school. It was an impulsive decision, perhaps, but it came from a place deep inside her that she could no longer ignore. She wanted real life, real people, to be her world. This brings us to one of the most powerful stories Lori shares, a short essay called Welcome to Holland. It was sent to her patient Julie, a young newlywed dying of cancer. The essay compares having a baby to planning a fabulous trip to Italy. You buy the guidebooks, you learn some Italian phrases, you dream of the Colosseum and the gondolas in Venice. Then, after months of anticipation, your plane lands. The flight attendant comes on and says, "Welcome to Holland." "Holland?" you say. "What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy, but the flight plan has changed." You've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The point is, you haven't been taken to a horrible, disgusting place. It's just a different place. It's slower, less flashy than Italy. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland, the windmills, the tulips, the Rembrandts. When Julie first read this, she was furious. There was nothing special or lovely about cancer. But her best friend, whose son had severe autism, gently told her she was missing the point. Her life was no longer going to be Italy. But she could still find a version of life, a version of joy, in Holland. This is a theme that runs through every story in the book. We all have our own version of Holland, the life we get, not the one we planned. John, the idiot guy, landed in a Holland of grief after the sudden death of his mother when he was 6, and then again, in an unthinkable tragedy involving his own son. Rita, the older woman, landed in a Holland of loneliness and regret after a series of failed marriages. Lori herself landed in Holland the night boyfriend broke up with her. And this is where therapy comes in. It helps us buy new guidebooks, learn a new language, and discover the hidden beauty of the place we found ourselves in. For Julie, Holland meant confronting her mortality head-on. With Lori's help, she starts to live more fully, not in some distant future, but right now. She even gets a job as a cashier at Trader Joe's, something she'd always fantasized about, finding joy and connection in the simple, human interactions over groceries. She wanted to be known as a person, not a cancer patient. It was her way of reclaiming her story. Her journey is a heartbreaking and beautiful reminder that even in the face of death, there is life. And love. The book she writes for her husband, to be read after she's gone, even includes a dating profile for him to use to find a new wife. Her final wish is for him to have another epic love story. As her father once told her, at the end of the day, love wins. Now, let's go back to John, the man who thinks everyone is an idiot. Week after week, he comes to Lori's office, sits on her couch, and complains. He complains about his wife, Margot, who he says is depressed. He complains about his colleagues. He interrupts Lori whenever she tries to speak. He even starts texting during their sessions. Lori knows that John's abrasive exterior is a defense, a fortress he's built to keep people from getting too close. Her job is to find a way in. One day, when he won't stop texting, she tries a new tactic. She picks up her own phone and texts him. "It's me, your therapist. I'm over here." John is shocked. "You're texting me now?" But it works. It gets his attention. It's a small crack in his fortress. The real breakthrough, though, comes from an unexpected source, his dog, Rosie. John complains that Rosie is being an idiot, peeing on the bed. But as he talks about her, a different side of him emerges. A softer side. "You really love her," Lori says. "Of course I do. She's my daughter," John snaps back. No, Lori says gently. I mean Rosie. You care about her deeply. John's face brightens. He pulls out his phone to show Lori a picture of Rosie. She's a rescue dog, he says proudly. The dog in the photo is, to be honest, one of the ugliest dogs Lori has ever seen. But John is beaming, completely smitten. You know what I love about Rosie? He says later. She's the only one who doesn't ask things of me. The only one who isn't, in one way or another, disappointed with me. It's a huge admission. Underneath all the bluster is a man who feels like a failure, a man terrified of disappointing the people he loves. It's the first glimpse of the real John, the one hiding behind the asshole persona. And this brings us to the biggest secret of John's life, a story he has never told anyone. One session, while complaining about his wife and daughters, he makes a slip of the tongue. He's talking about how there's too much estrogen in the house, how his daughter Grace is acting like a teenager, and then he says, and Gabe's getting so emotional. Gabe? Lori asks. John gets flustered. I meant Grace, he says. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Drive. Freud. But Lori gently presses. Who's Gabe? There's a long silence. Finally, John says it, so quietly she can barely hear him. Gabe is my son. Then he gets up and walks out, ending the session. He doesn't come back for a month. When he finally returns, he lies down on the couch, faces the back, and tells her the story. Years ago, he and Margot were driving to Legoland with their two young children, 6-year-old Gabe and 5-year-old Gracie. They were having a wonderful time, singing silly songs in the car. John felt a rare sense of peace. He had promised Margot he would stay off his phone for the trip. Then, his phone rang. It was an emergency, he assumed. Margot gave him a look. Don't, she said. They started to argue. The kids in the back went silent. As John reached for the phone, a drunk driver in an SUV veered into their lane. The last thing John heard was his son's voice, a piercing scream, Daddy wee. Gabe died at the scene. The not knowing is what torments him. Was he responsible? If he hadn't reached for the phone, could he have avoided the crash? Or was it Margot's fault for starting the argument? Or was it just a drunk driver? No one will ever know for sure. After Gabe's death, John and Margot were lost in their own separate worlds of grief. He couldn't talk about it. He buried himself in his work, trying to be strong for his family. Margot wanted to talk, but he couldn't. He felt that his pain was evidence of his love for Gabe, and if the pain let up, it meant he was forgetting him. You're both so alone in your grief, Lori tells him. And in your joy. She explains that maybe, all this time, Margot has been crying for both of them. And then, John starts to cry. Not just a few tears, but a guttural wail. The tears he has been holding in for years. He's not breaking down, Lori tells him. He's breaking open. This is the turning point for John. It's not that his pain goes away, but he learns to live with it. He starts talking to Margot about Gabe. They start couples therapy. One night, they are rolling on the floor, laughing with their daughters, and he has a thought, I love my fucking family. He realizes that happiness isn't a destination. Maybe happiness is sometimes, he says to Lori. This journey of self-discovery is something Lori is experiencing in her own therapy with Wendell. She spends weeks talking about boyfriend, convinced he's the source of all her pain. But Wendell keeps gently pushing her to look deeper. He tells her, there's a difference between pain and suffering. You're going to have to feel pain? Everyone feels pain at times, but you don't have to suffer so much. You're not choosing the pain, but you're choosing the suffering. He suggests that her endless obsession with boyfriend is a way of avoiding something else, something she's even more afraid to face. He brings up the cartoon of the prisoner shaking the bars of his cell, desperately trying to get out, but to his right and left, it's open. There are no bars. All the prisoner has to do is walk around, Wendell says. That's most of us. We feel completely stuck, trapped in our emotional cells, but there's a way out, as long as we're willing to see it. This image becomes a revelation for Lori. She realizes she is her own jailer. Her obsession with boyfriend, her story of being the innocent victim, these are the bars she's been shaking. But what is she really imprisoned by? This leads to her first big confession to Wendell. It's not just about the breakup. She's supposed to be writing a book on happiness, but she can't. It's making her miserable. She feels like a fraud. She turned down a lucrative contract to write a book about parenting because she didn't think the world needed another one, a decision she has regretted for years. Now she's stuck with this happiness book, and she's paralyzed. Boyfriend was a convenient distraction from this professional and existential crisis. When he was gone, she filled the void by obsessing over him. But there's another, deeper secret she's been keeping, not just from Wendell, but from herself. For a couple of years, she's been suffering from a mysterious illness. A painful rash, debilitating fatigue, strange infections, an irregular heart rate, tremors. She's been on a medical mystery tour, seeing specialist after specialist, but no one can figure out what's wrong. One neurologist even dismisses her symptoms as anxiety, a modern-day version of Freud's female hysteria, caused by a wandering uterus. She hid the extent of her illness from boyfriend because early in their relationship, he'd mentioned breaking up with a woman who had a minor health issue. "I don't want to have to take care of her if she gets really sick one day," he'd said. So Lori pretended she was fine. She avoided seeing the clues about her health, just as she avoided the clues that she and boyfriend weren't a good match. They were both hiding from the truth. Wendell listens to all of this and connects it to what he calls the 4 ultimate concerns that all humans face: death, isolation, freedom, and meaninglessness. Lori's fear of her illness is a fear of death. Her breakup plunged her into a fear of isolation. Her paralysis over her book is a fear of freedom, the responsibility of making choices about her life. And all of it leads to the 4th concern, a crisis of meaning. Her fight, Wendell tells her, isn't with boyfriend, or her book, or even her illness. It's a fight with death. This is the core of the book. All of the stories, Lori's, John's, Julie's, Rita's, are about confronting these ultimate concerns. They are all searching for meaning in their lives. For Rita, the 69-year-old woman who gave herself a 1-year deadline to live, it means confronting a lifetime of regret. She believes she's unlovable, a bad mother who failed to protect her children from their alcoholic father. She keeps everyone at a distance, convinced that if they really knew her, they would be disgusted. Then, Myron comes into her life. A kind widower who moves into her apartment building. They become friends, but Rita is terrified of anything more. When he finally confesses his feelings for her, she slaps him and runs away. She writes him a long, brutally honest letter, confessing all of her past crimes, sure that he will reject her. But he doesn't. His response is full of compassion and understanding. He has his own baggage, he tells her. Everyone does. And just like that, Rita's life begins to change. She starts teaching art. She becomes a California grandma to the neighbor kids. For her 70th birthday, instead of ending her life, she has a surprise party thrown by all the new people who have come to love her. She even gets an email from her estranged daughter, an opening, a glimmer of hope for repair. Her story is a powerful testament that it's never too late to change, to find connection, to create meaning. As her new business is called, It Ain't Over Till It's Over Incorporated. And finally, there's Charlotte, the 25-year-old who reminds Lori of her younger self. She struggles with alcohol, anxiety, and a string of unavailable men. Her type, she says, is guys like the dude from the waiting room, a fellow patient who flirts with her while he has a girlfriend. This is what therapists call repetition compulsion. We are drawn to people who feel familiar, even if that familiarity is painful. Charlotte's father was emotionally unavailable, disappearing and reappearing in her life. So she is drawn to men who do the same. Her unconscious is trying to master an old wound, to finally get it right this time. But by choosing the same type of person, she only gets hurt again. Her journey is about breaking that pattern. It's about moving through the stages of change, from pre-contemplation denial, to contemplation ambivalence, to preparation, to action, and finally, to maintenance. It's not a straight line. There are relapses and setbacks. But eventually, Charlotte starts to change her dance steps. She gets sober. She changes her therapy appointment time so she doesn't have to see the dude. She starts to say no to what hurts her and yes to what heals her. She realizes that being the cool girl who pretends not to care feels like shit. All of these stories, Lori's, John's, Julie's, Rita's, and Charlotte's, weave together to form a beautiful tapestry of what it means to be human. They show us that therapy isn't about getting a quick fix. It's about growth. It's about learning to sit with discomfort. It's about taking responsibility for our own lives. As Lori's journey with Wendell comes to a close, she realizes that he didn't save her. He helped her save herself. She has learned to walk around the bars of her prison cell. She has let go of the fantasy that everything would have been perfect if she'd married boyfriend or written the parenting book. She has started to face her illness with courage instead of avoidance. She has started writing again, but this time, something that has meaning. This book. In their final session, they don't say goodbye. They call it a pause in the conversation, because relationships in life don't really end. Every person you've been close to lives on somewhere inside you. The book ends with Lori leaving Wendell's office for the last time. She walks out into the sunlight, no longer rushing. She notices the warmth on her skin, lifts her eyes to the world, and thinks, actually, I've got plenty of time. It's a beautiful, hopeful ending to a journey that began in darkness and confusion. It's a reminder that we all have the capacity to change, to heal, and to find meaning, no matter what Holland we've landed in. Commentary. So, what do we take away from this incredible journey? What is the secret that Lori Gottlieb is trying to share with us? I think it comes down to a few very powerful, very simple truths. First, that we are all unreliable narrators of our own lives. We tell ourselves stories to make sense of the world, but often, those stories are designed to protect us from painful truths. We are the hero, the victim, the misunderstood one. John's story was that everyone else was an idiot. Rita's story was that it was too late for her. Lori's story was that boyfriend was a sociopath who ruined her life. But none of those stories were the whole truth. Therapy, at its core, is a process of editing our stories. It's about finding a more honest, more compassionate, and more empowering narrative. The second truth is that change and loss travel together. We can't have one without the other. This is why we so often stay stuck. We say we want to change, but we are terrified of what we will have to let go of. It might be a relationship, a job, or even a familiar, comfortable misery. The prisoner in the cartoon is afraid of the freedom outside his cell. It's unknown territory. And so he stays, shaking the bars of a prison that doesn't even exist. The book asks us to consider, what are the open bars in our own lives that we are refusing to walk through? And finally, the most important truth of all is about connection. We grow in connection with others. We can't do it alone. We all need to be seen, to be heard, to feel that we matter. In one of the most moving moments in the book, Lori asks Wendell a very vulnerable question. "Do you like me?" And he replies, so simply, "I do like you." He says he likes her neshama, the Hebrew word for soul. That is the magic of a good therapeutic relationship, and really, any good relationship. It's the experience of having your soul seen and valued. It's what gives us the courage to face our fears, to edit our stories, and to walk through those open bars into a life of meaning. If there's one action you can take away from this book, it's this: start to get curious about your own story. What are the narratives you tell yourself every day? Are they serving you? Are they true? And if you find that you're stuck, that you keep stepping in the same puddle over and over again, remember what Lori did. Maybe you should talk to someone. Because freedom isn't about the absence of bars. It's about the willingness to see that they were never there in the first place. That was a summary of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. We've journeyed through the main stories and ideas today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic of this book happens in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to give you a sense of the book's heart and to help you decide if it's worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning psychological concepts, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your relationships, and the beautiful, messy business of being human. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.